Wales and England, folks. Rugby World Cup warm-up match this weekend. Wales and England, traditional rivals, resumed their rivalry from the Millennium Stadium. And Warwick Gatland's picked a few, I don't want to say left field ones, but it's a wee bit of a changed Welsh squad. And I've not been keeping up with all the squads that Steve Borthwick's been naming. I just keep seeing them in my social media feeds, but he's named that many squads I've had kind of checked out of them. But he's finally named a team. So we'll go through both teams, some recent history between the sides, some predictions, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on how this one might be going to go. Recent history is actually pretty lopsided, with England dominating the last 5 games, 4-1. That goes back to the 2020 Six Nations, where England managed to get a 3-point win. Then they won in Llanelli during that first Autumn Nations Cup. Remember, during COVID, when the Millennium Stadium was not being used for rugby. And then, the solitary Welsh win comes in the middle of those last 5 in that 2021 Six Nations campaign, where it was a big win, 40 points to 24. But yeah, overall, in recent times, the scoreline has tended to favour England. Even this year, early on in the year, when the English won 20 points to 10 at the same stadium this game's being played at. So how much of that affects this game, I'm not sure. You can still feel like both of these squads, in terms of the coaching changes they've had in recent times, are not quite 100% settled. But looking at the lineups, it certainly feels like the English squad is slightly more settled than the Welsh. But anyway, we'll go through them and you guys can let us know your thoughts. So a couple of new props for Wales, man. If you're a 26-year-old prop who plays for Cardiff, it was your lucky day, because both Domachowski and Assiratti are both playing and both getting their international test debuts, which is unusual for both guys to start on debut. And that's just not usually a thing. Usually you're kind of eased into it from the bench and not 2 props at the same time. But we will see how that goes. Ryan Elias is there between those 2 guys. I don't think we saw him feature in the Six Nations either. So in some ways, it's an all-new Welsh front row. Dafydd Jenkins, we did see in the Six Nations. He continues on the second row alongside the returning Rowlands. It was kind of disappointing to see him leave. Obviously, Welsh rugby's had its issues. But it's great to see Rowlands back, because I do think he's been one of the kind of higher work rate players in that Welsh squad in recent times. Tshiunza is there at number 6. Jack Morgan is at 7, and Aaron Wainwright is at 8. So it's a kind of familiar back row, although Jack Morgan gets the captaincy, so congratulations to him. He spoke pretty well in the pre-match press conference about what an honour it is for him to be captaining the side. Said all the right things. So, that works pretty well. And Tshiunza, being that kind of big unit that he is, potential extra line-out option, makes the back row seem kind of well balanced. So we will see how they go. As I said, it's a mix of youth and experience. Gareth Davies and Sam Costelow is the 9-10 combo. Gareth Davies is another one who we didn't see during the Six Nations, and then Sam Costelow likewise. How many tests has he played? It's not many, but they're kind of keeping that Scarlets connection at 9 and 10, so those guys should at least be relatively familiar with each other. And then another debutant in Max Llewellyn at number 12. Gats likes big 12s, doesn't he? He's got him and George North. That's a pretty big, beefy midfield. I mean, Llewellyn's like 6'5", 100 plus kilos. So he is a big man. I look forward to seeing how he goes up against the English guys. Good luck to him, man. I mean, one thing Gatland did say is, in terms of giving so many guys their first chances, it makes sense to do it at home, in front of home fans. Family can be there. It's a bit more special and maybe a little bit less pressure in one way, I guess. So familiar for them. Rees-Zammit is on the right wing, and Dyer is on the left. So there's certainly some speed in that Welsh back line. And then the experience of Leigh Halfpenny at fullback. It's a big occasion for him, and he may or may not be called to put his trusty boot to work at crucial moments. We'll kind of have to wait and see. But that's the starting 15 for Wales. What did they say? I think they said it was Halfpenny's 100th, was it? I seem to remember it's a big important cap for him, so it's a big old congratulations, especially at home. Replacements, D. Smith and Henry Thomas, ex-England international. That's your replacement front row, so it's a Welsh debut for Henry Thomas. Ben Carter is there, and then Taine Plumtree. I don't think they mentioned much on Taine Plumtree in the press conference, but that's a left field one for mine. Now, he may join the kind of growing list of New Zealanders who didn't quite make it over here, but then is transformed abroad. Like Taine Plumtree plays for my Blues, and he could hardly get in the side. Admittedly, we've got a bunch of All Blacks in the Blues, especially in the loose forwards, but yeah, he struggled for game time. And yet here he is getting his test debut for Wales. If you'd said to me he's going to get his test debut, I wouldn't have picked it. But yeah, we'll see how he goes. As I said, there's been a bunch of guys who, like Jameson Gibson Park, I didn't think he had the chops for international rugby, and boy was I wrong about that guy. Look what he's doing with Ireland. I mean, yeah, there's a long list of them. So good luck to him. Thomas Williams, Dan Biggar, and Mason Grady, those are your back replacements. So I will be curious to kind of see what kind of minutes Gats gives these guys in terms of balancing getting a result and also getting some minutes into all the different players. He did kind of single out Sam Costelow for being a real good attacking threat, good passing game, and then he said he's been working on his kicking game a fair bit. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to watch. For England, there's also, I would say, a few kind of left field picks. I mean, I called the squad a bit stable, but a bunch of these guys also did not play in the Six Nations just gone, although they don't have quite as many guys playing their first ever test matches the Welsh do. Ellis Gens, Jamie Blumeyer, and Will Stewart. That's your front row. Blumeyer and Stewart didn't play in the Six Nations, and Blumeyer, it's an interesting one because they always played Jamie George. So many minutes, that guy. Who was the other guy who was getting minutes? I remember there was a bunch of hookers injured. Remember, Keiron Dicky's out for the World Cup, which is pretty brutal. But, yeah, they just kept giving all the minutes to Jamie George during the Six Nations. So I felt like the pecking order was rather thin at the time. But in this case, you've got Benoit, who's back into the squad, and then Theo Dan, the debutant from Saracens, 22-year-old, on the bench. So it's certainly a new-look hooking combo. And Genji, as captain, spoke really well in the pre-match stuff, said all the right things. So pleased for him to get that honour. And then second row, Dave Ribbons and George Martin. Not a lot of caps in that second row as well. I mean, George Martin back into the 23 after not playing in the Six Nations. I think it's his second cap overall. Dave Ribbons was in a late addition to the Six Nations squad earlier in the year. A little bit more experience in the back row with Ludlam at 6 and Dombrandt at 8. But then you got Tom Pearson there getting his first ever cap straight into the deep end as well. So, I mean, it does probably not help. Well, it probably helps Pearson that Tom Curry they mentioned has an ankle injury. But yeah, it's been a bit of a musical chairs one, that number 7 jersey as well. Danny Kerr and Marcus Smith, that's a 19 combo, which is a pretty familiar one in terms of their game time together. So it's an interesting one having no Owen Farrell in the squad. Maybe a little bit of extra pressure on old Marcus, but he'll probably relish that. And then Guy Porter, Joe Marchant, 12-13. So Guy Porter is another one who didn't feature in the Six Nations but is now back. Cokanasiga, likewise, he's back in with Max Malins and Freddie Steward, the other wing and fullback respectively. Freddie Steward is one of the guys who has been, a real lock on his position. But yeah, so that's why I mentioned it's a real mixture. Debutant here, recall into the squad there, and then stalwarts like Genji and Freddie Steward and so on elsewhere. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's really too hard to know, and it's the first game for both these sides, so we don't expect either of them to kind of come out of the blocks at 100%, I wouldn't imagine. I mentioned Theo Dan, debutant on the bench alongside Bevan Rod and Kyle Sinclair. Bevan Rod's back into the England squad after missing out for a wee while. Johnny Hill, likewise. Tom Willis, likewise. And then Bam Portfleet, George Ford, and Henry Slade as well. Good to see George Ford back in the mix after being on the outer for quite some time. So, yeah, it's... I really am a bit... I don't want to say torn, but it's just new. It's different for both these sides. And as I said, with the coaches having as much time as they've had, which is not much, it does make some kind of sense. But this game feels like it could be really ugly, just in terms of so many new combinations and guys getting back together. But they've been in camp together for so long. Maybe they'll just hit the ground running. We'll have to kind of wait and see. Average score across the last 5 games between these two sides was 25-22 to England. So despite the kind of dominant record that England have got, it is generally pretty tight. It was a 10-pointer last year, 20 points to 10. A lot of kicking in that game. I think it was 38-34 kicks from hand, which is a lot. Some teams don't even get 20 in a game. So one team to get 38 was a lot. So it'll be You know, with Gatland kind of singling out Costelow's kicking game not being his strongest attribute, whether they look for him to kick or run will be one to watch. It is on at the Principality. It's on at 5:30 local time, which makes it 4:30 in the morning over here in New Zealand. So I'll probably be up by that point. Nick Berry from Australia is the ref. Predictions wise, it is England predict to get it done with the bookies by 5, and the rugby forecast algorithm says 1. I do find this a hard one to predict, as I said, with a fair bit of uncertainty in both the squads. If you want some England rugby gear, check out England Rugby Store. They've got loads of stuff. The amount of variety of stuff that they sell you is quite unbelievable. I generally just look at rugby jerseys, but boy, when I scroll down to have a look at all the stuff they've got available, like stickers that you can put on the wall that look like you're looking over a broken wall to Twickenham, that's nuts. But there you go, England Rugby Store. Link down in the description if you want some gear. You guys let us know your thoughts. How do you reckon this one's going to go? And yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.